Mostly they're looking to see like probably like energy, passion for the problem space for the company itself. Like, I mean, it's a lot of work, so they'll expect you to, give a lot of your time and spare time to work on their product. So you should, as somebody trying to get hired, you should always look out for that and ask them about, the work-life balance. You don't want to be working 60 hours a week. But a startup is definitely different from, a job at a big company where, you go, 7 to 4, 9 to 5, and you're done. Startup tends to take over a little bit. So, and that's fine. Just don't let it take over too much.
Right. Having worked in the opposite end of the spectrum and joining a startup would be joining a technology companies. You've worked in a couple of big tech companies,
Yep.
including Microsoft, Hulu,
Yep.
and Azure. So again, same question: what skill set would the person need to develop to follow that path?
This is the big company skill set. So they're the one thing they look at is, they generally are a lot more formal around education. So they'll definitely, if you're going after tech, they'll probably look for some education, especially if it's an entry level position. They'll definitely prioritize candidates that have a background. Although that's changing now. They've made a commitment to take people. Maybe you have a biology undergraduate degree, but you've gone to coding school, and then they're trying to make an effort to accept people from diverse backgrounds. But I think for big tech, education is important. If you're, maybe a little bit more senior in your career, they're going to want to see, a track record of, working at other comparable companies in a similar space. And then as far as the skills you're going to develop, like you're going to learn a lot at big tech. Some of the things you learn at big tech, I think you're going to need to unlearn because they're not good things. Like there's obviously politics and a lot of, like, you learn not necessarily as much about delivering customer value, but you learn about how do you manage up and how do you climb the ladder in a company. And so if you find yourself in that position, I'd say run for the exit. It's not a very useful skill, but some people thrive in that environment and they really enjoy, big company politics. I don't. And that's why I quit. I was at Microsoft for 8 years, and I probably overstayed my time by three or so years. In the beginning, in the early days, I was definitely learning a lot about how to build products. But towards the end, it became all about managing up and how does your leadership see you, and are you aligned with what the leadership wants to accomplish? And sometimes you can say the wrong thing if you're let's say you think you have ideas that don't support what your management wants to do, then that's not a great place to be.
Okay. Your talk was about maximizing your chance of being part of the successful 8%.
Yes.
Now, say with the highest likelihood you'll be in the 92%. What time, or that's the fact that you should step it before starting with started. So what metrics, what milestones would you put for yourself? At which point you need to fall, basically? Are you going to put specific deadlines for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely. So yeah. So how do you know when to move on? Exactly. Basically. I mean, I think it goes to your question from earlier. Definitely figure out what's your runway, your financial runway, beyond which you'll be sacrificing your quality of life in a way you're not comfortable with, or at what point you'll have to have difficult conversations with your family or your partner about making cuts, or or lowering your quality of life in a way you're not comfortable with. And based on that, set yourself at sort of an exit horizon, and keep that in mind as you make progress or not. Right.
Okay, leading with that, given that the financial stability is basically your metric for continuing or not on the project you're working on, what stage of the project would you recommend a startup to get their investment? Should they start from as simple as the idea and then start getting the investment and then start building, or start with the product first?
Yeah. So when to seek investment, there's no one right answer. I know founders that immediately, as soon as they can get investment, Basically, as soon as they have the PowerPoint deck that the investors are willing to give them money for, they take as much money as they can. And that optimizes for growth because that means immediately they're able to hire, immediately they're able to start working on the idea and proving whether it's successful. Me and my co-founders, we picked a different path where we call bootstrapping, where we funded our own idea through the first 2 years of the development of the idea. And we signed, five customers before we even got any investment, external investment. And so both are valid approaches. In the second idea, you preserve a little bit more of your ownership of the company. Like the earlier you take money, the more ownership you give away. Because with venture capital, you're not just gonna take money once. Once you take that first round of funding, you're basically signing yourself up for a little bit of a treadmill where you're repeatedly taking funding every 18 months or so. You might end up in a position where if you have a less than stellar exit, like let's say you get bought, but you don't necessarily become a big public company or a big breakout success, you might find yourself working for 5 and 6 years. And when the company gets sold, if you've taken a whole bunch of funding, sold off a bunch of your share, you might find out that you're walking away with not that much, and maybe not even. That's why I was saying it's not financially lucrative. You might actually, if you went and you thought about your previous job and you summed up your salaries for the 5 years, and then you look at how much money you exited with, it might actually be less. So that's why, if you really want to maximize your chances of success, like you can try to hold off and take funding later.
Right.
Basically, as much progress as you can make pre-funding kind of protects your ownership. But you might not have that luxury. We had the luxury of both me and my co-founders came from tech backgrounds. We had savings that allowed us to not pay ourselves for a couple of years. A lot of people don't have like 2 years worth of savings. They have 6 months worth of savings. And so then you'll work on it for 6 months and then you'll need to raise.
That would be your deadline, basically. 6 months.
It just depends on how much you have been able to save to be able to start.
So that's for external equity. What about internal equity? How do you split that pie basically with your co-founders?
Yeah, so once you're starting a business, that's a great question. It's a lot of businesses fail because founders cannot decide on how do they split up the ownership. When you start with a business, it's 100% of the pie, and it's just 3 people. And so a lot of people will be like, we're going to do 33.3% each. Everybody gets a third, and that's generally not a great way to do it. Or if you're doing a business with somebody else, you go 50-50. That's a recipe for disaster, because then if you guys can't agree, a decision cannot be made. 33 is less bad because at least if 2 of you agree, you can overrule the third founder. But I also would recommend against just dividing it evenly like that. There's tools out there that let you sort of calculate what's a fair percentage of ownership based on the responsibilities that you're doing. If you Google startup equity calculator, there's like 3 or 4 out there. They're all tech focused, but you can try to adapt it to non-tech as well. Generally, it's like who does the sales, who does the marketing, who does the core product development, who does the people management, and kind of like you get sort of points for whoever is taking on those responsibilities. So I think sales counts for a lot. Whoever's bringing in the revenue, like that bumps up your share quite a bit. If you're driving the execution, whatever that means, whether it's engineering or product development, that definitely gets you a lot.
That will be accounted for in the tool you suggest, the web tool.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
If you have a particular one in mind, I think we can share it today.
I don't know. I mean, I literally told you, it's Google Startup Equity Calculator. Right. It's the top one. The first one you click on. Yeah. Yeah. Just at the very early stage. Yeah. So it's all going to depend on the size of the exit, right? If it's a $2 billion exit and you own 1% or 2%, that's a great place to be. if after 10 years the company's been going up and then sideways, and then it's like a $1 million exit, 1% of 1 million is not worth 10 years of your life. So there's no one size answer. I think you definitely don't want to start with a position of probably less than 25%, because you definitely, if you're going through funding rounds, that's going to put you at like 15. If you like go 20, that's going to put you at 15 after the first round, and that's going to put you at even less after that. Each round, like the first couple of rounds, each round bites off about 30% of what you have, and most companies go at least 3 rounds, and then unless you have a monster exit, unless you become the next Facebook, if you end up with like less than 1%, you're in trouble. So maybe think about it in your head, like in 10 years, what could this be worth? And then think about getting diluted 30% times 3 times, and then calculate back what's the minimum starting share. Like I said, it's not a great way to get rich unless you're very, very lucky. I can't speak authoritatively about Saudi, but in Seattle, usually your seed round is going to be 30%, 20% for the investors, 10% for the employee pool. And then subsequent rounds may be, it's up to negotiation. It could be between 15 and 25. So I think it depends on the place you're raising, and also where your business is at. You know, sometimes you may want to take more money and sell more if you have a specific reason you're raising.
Okay. One last question we have here. We're kind of almost
exactly at time.
Yeah, just one more if you'll allow it. About finding the right co-founders who are you willing to collaborate with, and what do you look for in your co-founders? Absolutely.
In your co-founders, obviously, all the stuff I said earlier about people that are psychologically resilient, that will be there and be able to support you through the hard times in your business. You know, if you have a hunch that someone is, you know, going to be difficult to deal with, or they're psychologically not strong enough to deal with it, or you see that their financial position is not strong enough to be able to stick with you through the journey, then probably that's a red flag.
Is it mostly about financials?
Well, I'm going to get to the other stuff, but obviously, so that's one lens, is like, you know, make sure that they are solid financially, psychologically, emotionally, again, to maximize the chances of success. Then in terms of team composition, I mean, it's generally great to have somebody with a business hat, and, you know, somebody with a more of a technical hat. So sometimes it's the same person. Usually it's 2 separate people. One is more customer business facing, one is more product and technology facing. So make sure you have a nice, you know, mix of skills. If you're all technical and no one can speak to customers or investors, that's not a great fit. If you have 3 founders, you know, usually there's like somebody who's great at business, somebody who's great at technical, and maybe somebody's great at marketing, messaging, storytelling. So make sure you have a good blend of skills for the problem you're trying to solve. That's the second. And the third is, you know, interpersonal problem solving. Like, make sure that it's somebody who you can have difficult conversations with without emotion getting in the way. I generally advise against doing business with friends or doing business with family. You know, we tend to be entangled in emotional ways with our friends that make it hard to sometimes have hard conversations or make hard decisions.
Does that advice extends to investors as well? Would advice against investments from family and friends?
No, actually, no, not at all. There's something called the family and friends round usually.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, when you take investment from family or friends, like, the same rules apply. Like, you want to put it down on paper, you want to make sure the terms are clear, you know, make sure they know they're probably going to lose all their money. And you want to be very upfront about that. And you know, if your family still agrees, then definitely. I mean, generally, family is okay with, they're invested in your success. They're okay, and they're generally not putting in a big enough sum that they would care.
Right.
But yeah, I'd advise, again, unless you have like perfect communication and with your friends, and you know, you're all okay if something fails and it's the other person's fault, and you know, you're still able to recover from that. And
then
maybe,
you can collaborate with them as a
Yeah, it's so tough. I personally stay away from it.
All right. I guess that covers pretty much it. You guys are all welcome to get the pastries and juice in there, and you can continue the conversations one-on-ones for the next 2.5 hours until we close the center, basically.
Great.
Right? Thank you so
I'm
much
around
for
in case
attending.
anybody's
Thank
question.
you again, Yavor,
guys.
for all your time and
Thanks for having me.
the effort you put into this. I
Appreciate
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Please.